Best projects don't feel like work, really. It's just great exploring it. There isn't really an art side to things and a commercial side to things. The best projects are when it's both at the same time. Kia ora, South Coast Arts Trail. My name's Andy Spain. I'm an architectural photographer. Welcome to my studio. I was given a enlarger kit by my brother when I was about 12 because he got bored of doing his own darkroom stuff. And I had no interest in art or photography at all really at that stage. And so I got the darkroom kit, set up a darkroom in one of my other brother's bedrooms, borrowed my dad's camera, and that was the initial interest really. And then since then everything I did was progressing in that direction. So I did a A-level in media studies that had a photography component. I went and did a degree in photography, had a sideways accident and worked in a bank for a few years, and then went back and did a master's in photography. And then for the last 20 plus years I've been working as a freelance architectural photographer, always doing arty side projects on the side. I'm a freelance photographer working with architects and construction companies and developers and all that kind of thing. So when they've finished a nice building, be it a school or a flash house or a hospital or some government project or an interior fit out, I go and shoot the finished images for them so they can use them in their website and marketing and competitions and magazines and all that kind of thing. Which is, yeah, of my full-time job as it has been for the last 20 years. So this is was a project that I really early on with the New Zealand Institute of Architects for an exhibition I had in Egmont Street when I had an office in there. It was initially a light box, 7.5 metre long light box of every building on Cuba Street, and then the project, you know, like most things, just lays dormant in my back room over there. And I thought, oh, it's a real shame that I'm not doing more with it, and especially as time goes by it becomes more and more relevant because buildings change and get knocked down, and you know, Cuba Street becomes less boutiquey. I created it in a book, so you open it up and it's a very long panorama of literally every single building on Cuba Street with about 150 different images. The idea being that I've used a continuous roof line, so the actual images themselves move up and down slightly to give a sort of haptic effect to walking along the street. You know, I only produced 10. One of them went into the National Library. After doing the Cuba Street panorama, which has a relationship to the work by Ed Ruscha, who did every building on Sunset Strip back in the 1960s, so that's kind of the idea from it. But after doing that, I then got in contact with Cuba Duper and Wellington NZ and did a series of people who work on Cuba Street and around Cuba Street. So you can see Chrissy O in the background there, who obviously runs Hunters and Collectors. This one down here is I love this image. It's one of my favourites. During the Black Lives Matter movement in the States in 2020, the statue of Hamilton remained in the big square up in Hamilton itself, and the local iwi, or someone from the local iwi said, either you take it down to the council or I'm going to knock it down. So it was taken down, and it fascinated me, where do shamed statues go? So I contacted the local mayor and eventually got permission to photograph the statue where it had been hidden away from view in this big conference centre, and I was, you know, allowed to go and photograph it. I went into this room, this sort of nice moisture temperature controlled room, and it was all wrapped in clinging glad wrap, and I sort of pulled that off, and it had a big black cloak over it, and I pulled that off, and then the last thing was this white cloak, white plastic that was still there, and I thought, oh no, I'm not going to take it off. It's much stronger to have this kind of shamed aspect of this, the way we sort of look at things in a different viewpoint as the decades go by. I wanted to avoid kitsch Kiwiana, but I was still, having only lived here for 10 years, it's still that kind of Wellington, New Zealand architecture, I suppose, really interests me. The dairies, the fish and chip shops, all that kind of thing. And also the ability now with modern photography to shoot at really high ISO, so that I could actually freeze the subjects and then do a AI denoise, so it still maintains its sort of usability rather than becoming really, really grainy. So they've been quite fun. I kind of obviously love Hopper, people just looking out blankly into the night. I remember my wife giving quite a compelling argument that if we're going to move to the other side of the world, we should be near the coast, because that's what Wellington's all about. And although she'd lived here up until her early 20s, it was a long time previously. And so we started exploring the coast, and had a few friends of friends that lived around the area, and then ended up in Island Bay. And so, yeah, it is inspirational. I remember doing a really early picture on one stormy, dark night of the sea, just on a long exposure, and it's just a pretty much black picture with white ribbons of the movement of the waves coming in, and then obviously the dairies and the fish and chip shops. And it's also the artist community. I mean, you can't go down onto the parade without, you know, bumping into a few friends and having a conversation. We've got there's another photographer I know locally, and a designer, and we meet up once a month and have a coffee and have the Little Boys Art Club, as we call it. So it's these little connections that being in a suburb like this really allow is fantastic. And the South Coast Arts Trail, it's just so fun walking around to people's houses and discovering people, and, you know, thinking, wow, I didn't know this person lived around the corner from me. They have such an interesting life. So yeah, that's been really good. And when I've opened up the space before, the amount of people that came, and you just thought, this is just absolutely amazing.